Welcome to Happier Childhoods, a podcast about movement, play, connection, and the grown-up work of supporting kids. I'm Carrie, social worker and founder of Play Motion Kids. And around here, we talk about practical ways adults can help create healthier, happier childhoods. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into it. This is Carrie, and today I am super excited to welcome Kristen Schmoke. She's a parent, coach, educator, and mom of 4 who has spent decades, helping kids thrive. After her own parenting journey pushed her to rethink traditional discipline, she now works with and teaches families how to build calmer homes and stronger relationships. So welcome, Kristen. I am so excited to talk with and learn from you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about why you got into coaching, or how did that journey start?
I mean, of course, before I had children and I was teaching, I was the perfect parent and I was the perfect teacher and I knew everything about kids. And then you get your own and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Actually, this is harder than I thought it was. And there's some things here that I need to explore. I always say that my oldest son was my greatest teacher because he really forced me to do things differently and to see things different than I had been. And it was because of our complicated relationship that I was forced to seek out other means of support. You know, we saw the doctors, we saw the specialists, and it just felt like all of the things that they were suggesting. And I was a teacher and I was a darn good one too. I had all of the ways to manage a classroom and manage children. I knew child development. And yet we were missing the mark on something. It just felt like all of the suggestions were quick band-aids. They didn't actually, like, they might have slowed the bleeding, but they didn't stop the bleeding, right? And I was on a mission to find a way to stop the bleeding because I knew it had to be better and it could be better than it was. And I am so thankful that my son is nonconformist in the way that he pushed back on and made me really question the things that I was doing and why. And I think that was really important.
That is really important. And, a lot of parents might not get to that point. I think sometimes there's that push and pull, and we don't take the time to really figure out what is going on, right? We live in the discomfort instead of trying to work through it. So I love that. What did you learn or discover about yourself during that journey, and maybe even about your family or your own children?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because we often repeat the things that our parents taught us, right? Because that's what we know, whether we think about it or don't, it's just kind of a natural response. And yeah, when we try to control our child, all that happens is we control more, right? If they push back and we think that controlling is the greatest thing or the thing that's going to get us to what we want, what we think we desire. But really all that does is get you to bigger threats, right? And so what I realized was that what I discovered about myself is that I didn't actually know as much as I thought about kids that I knew. I thought I knew it all. I thought I was a master educator. I thought I was a master parent, but it came down to I really didn't know squat and I had a lot more to learn. And actually, when I slowed down to learn the lessons my son was teaching me, rather than what I thought I was teaching him, that's really when things began to change because I started to listen more rather than think more. And it's really important here that I was listening to him and watching, observing his behavior because he was telling me all along what I needed to hear. I just wasn't listening prior to that.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. So it sounds like that's the shift you made, because that was going to be my next question. What changed in your parenting? What did it look like before versus after you went through this process? It sounds like it was more collaborative.
It's become more collaborative, right?
Okay.
Like Originally, like, I had this envision that, like, the parent was in charge and the parent was the decision maker. And yes, all of that is true. I have the fully developed brain, right? That my child's relying on me, but I was never taking into consideration his experience. I was only taking into consideration my experience and where I saw things and where I wanted him to be and where I thought he should go, not where he was being, where he was believing he needed to go. And so when I changed that shift, because the resources I had sought out before, the books, the specialists, the doctors, were not giving me the answers. When I sought out parent coaching, I was then able to change the way I was being, because in parent coaching, you learn a different way of being yourself. And then that changes your relationship with your child, and all about the energetic exchange, because your children can sense that energy about you. They can sense it because they only know how to exist in the present moment, right? And so they rely on this energetic exchange, this sensing of this feeling. They may not always have the words to say, like, I can tell my parent is misaligned. Like, I might be saying one thing, but they can sense that my energy feels another. Like, I might be saying I'm fine, but they can feel that I'm not fine. And as a natural way of protecting themselves, they go into, well, it's all about me. This must be my fault, right? That's the ego talking. That's the protective measure that happens in children. And when I changed my way of being, it then was an instant change with him, because he could sense it differently. And now my words and my actions were aligning with my energy. And of course, he's not consciously thinking this, but this is what happens. And so then he was able to change. I felt more like a safe place. Our relationship was good-ish, right? But there was always these moments of big emotional eruptions. He would be compliant to a point, and then he would push back. I didn't love his friend group. I didn't, like, he was 16 by this time. And it was just a joke that I spent 98.5% of my time on him and the other 1.5% on the other three combined. I mean, that was joking, but like, that should have been a reality check for me as to how much pressure I was putting on this child, and
Right.
how much I was trying to control and protect and guide him. And really what I needed to do was release the reins a little bit and allow him to trust himself and show that I was able to trust him too.
Oh my goodness, that is great. So, as a parent listening to this, though, like, we're talking very high level and the philosophy and the why. So, tell me what this looks like very practically. Like, what is a shift or change that you did in a very, specific interaction? Can you give an example?
Yes. First and foremost, it starts with the parent, right? It starts with who you're being in that moment. And what that looks like is, if you are a frantic, stressed out, overwhelmed, exhausted parent, that energy translates, and your child will absorb that energy, and maybe they reflect it back to you and you don't like to see it, so you lash out. Or maybe they take it and they change it to something else. So maybe they get really hyper or they get really defiant. It starts with the parent, and the parent is aware of themselves. And that starts with awareness of your thoughts, awareness of your actions, awareness of your judgments, and awareness of just your sense of being. Like, are you breathing? Have you taken a breath today? I mean, like, let's forget about, like, just even taking a shower or eating, but have you even intentionally taken a breath today? And when we pause and take that moment to breathe, how that shifts everything, because what that does is that brings our brain back online. Like, our prefrontal cortex, which is our thinking brain, it goes offline, and we go into this these rote actions. Like, we're just repeating the last couple days, and when we just repeat actions, right? We get into routines. But when we actually bring our prefrontal cortex online, we actually bring some intentionality, we bring some clarity, and then we can also bring compassion online. So taking a couple breaths. Now, I know there's always like a little resistance to hearing that, because people go, "Really, that's it?"
Right.
Not Kristen.
It's
I've
so,
tried breathing before.
yeah,
And
you're like, it's not that simple. That's what, yeah.
I mean, it really is that simple if you allow it to be. right? If you're going to resist breathing, I mean, I can't help you.
Right. We're not getting past that.
Right. But if you allow it to be that simple and you allow yourself the moment to just take a breath and you get to practice that in moments of low risk, that really benefits you in those moments of high risk or high intensity when you're having a conflict. And then you get to rely on that and be like, you know what, I can take a breath right now and I can recognize I'm not being my best self. I can recognize I'm being reactionary instead of responsive. And that makes all the difference because it's a difference from going from your prefrontal cortex to your limbic system or your amygdala, which is all emotional driven. And that is where you say things that you regret. That's where you make these really big, broad consequences or punishments that really don't fit the crime, where you're like, you've lost your phone for a month. Well, now you got to carry that out.
Right.
And it really is just as simple as starting with taking a breath, pausing. And I'm not talking one breath. I'm talking a couple and really just stopping yourself. We're in a society of fast, 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 go, go, go. But what if you slowed down and how that might change your experience?
So I love hearing you say that. And I try to be very intentional with that as well as a parent. And the other piece of that I think is really important that I'm sure you've seen as well is when you can do that, you can then model for your children how to do that.
That's the greatest win.
Yes.
Because you can talk to them till you're blue in the face, but really what they're doing is watching you and how you live your life. And if you can take these intentional breaths and maybe you call attention to it and you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to take a couple breaths right now before I respond to you. Or, hey, we're at a stoplight. Would you like to breathe with me? I'm going to take a couple breaths. It's an invitation. Like if they don't, fine. But as that becomes normal in your household, it becomes normal for them and it gives them the permission to also do it and to go out into the world and do it. Because then that translates to, I'm going to take a couple breaths in the middle of this test because I'm noticing I'm starting to feel stressed. Or I'm in the middle of a conflict with some friends. I'm going to just take a moment. I'm going to step back and I'm going to take a breath. You're giving your child these permissions to then model that in their own life.
Yeah, I love that. So it sounds like there's a lot of collaboration and autonomy that really helps with connection. But I am curious how you balance that with teaching boundaries, or if there really is like a hard and fast rule that you're like, no. So tell me what that line looks like and how do you balance it?
So it's interesting, right? Because as a child grows, your parenting also has to grow and change, right? Because we want them to experience independence. We want them to be autonomous. So the boundaries aren't going to always look the same, right? You're not going to give a boundary to a 3-year-old that you would a 13-year-old as well as a 23-year-old. Hopefully, eventually that 23-year-old will be able to use the oven, right? That we
I
don't
hope
want
so.
the 3-year-old,
Fingers crossed, Kristen.
right? But we don't want that 3-year-old to use.
Right.
But when you are the parent who's taking a breath, slowing down, you then are bringing your prefrontal cortex on. Your rational thinking brain is online, which means you can make decisions that are intentional. You can show up with compassion and you can show up with clarity. And in those moments, then you get to decide, am I going to lead with curiosity here or am I going to lead with judgment? Because when you lead with curiosity, you get to start to have those collaborative conversations with your child and say like, okay, you want more video game time. Here's my concerns about that. You tell me, convince me why you need more video game time. And now your child gets to come back with their own argument, so to speak, their own points that they get to discuss with you. And you get to say, okay, we can have a collaborative conversation about this. I'm hearing you say you want a little bit more independence in monitoring your own video game time. I'm okay with it. But here's my rules, or here's what I would like to see. Do you agree to the terms, so to speak, right? Like, do you agree to this? And we get to make that decision together, right? And then, like all good boundaries do, there's a sliding scale, right? We fall into being a little bit more lax on things. And then all of a sudden that boundary we talked about with tech time and your child leading of their own tech time and getting more, all of a sudden, wait, now they're really abusing that time. And that's when we get to come back and have that conversation of, hey, I'm noticing this. I'm curious. Can you tell me more what's going on for you? Do you need more support in this area? Because this is what we agreed to. I'm curious. This is now affecting your schooling. It's affecting our family time because I don't see you as much. I kind of miss you. I'd like to connect with you more. These are conversations you get to have now from a grounded place because now you're leading with clarity and curiosity and you're not coming from a place of accusations. And that's really different on the nervous system, right? When you come at a child with accusations, what's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to defend themselves, right? They're going to argue back. And well, then now you've just caused that prefrontal cortex to go offline. And now you're dealing with the limbic system, the amygdala, AKA a caveman. You're not going to negotiate with that caveman, right? It's not happening.
We
So
don't
now it's
negotiate with
lost.
terrorists.
Right. Yes, exactly. We don't negotiate with terrorists because you can't, because they're operating from a highly emotional state. And that's true for your child. The child's brain or the human brain doesn't develop and fully develop until the late 20s. So even though you have a child in college and you might say, you're this age, you should be able to do this, that doesn't necessarily mean they have the skill set to match it. We get to teach those things. We get to teach this. We get to teach independence. And so there's not a hard and fast rule. It's more based on your family values and where you would like the line to be. And when you notice that that boundary is creeping up on your family value and getting a little bit too uncomfortable for you, that's when you get to go, okay, we need to have a hard conversation.
Oh my
We need to have
goodness.
a realignment.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what I love about that is as a parent, you need to know what your own value and your family values are to know why maybe something they're doing or something that's happening is upsetting you so much.
Percent.
Yes, because you might not, there might be something that your child is doing and you're getting frustrated by it. But if you're not tying it back to, like, why does this even bother me?
Right.
Then you might not know or understand how to teach them about why we have this rule in our house.
Right. Because Susie and Johnny down the street, they can do it. Their parents don't care. And that's where you get to come back and be like, yeah, but in our family, this is what matters to us.
Right.
And I find parents often get triggered by things like laziness, disrespect, technology, even homework or schoolwork. Like those are some common family values, work ethic, that always kind of bubble up and they surprise you every now and then. But be aware of it and be like, oh, isn't that interesting? I just got really mad about my child sitting on the couch when I asked them to do their chores and they didn't do them. And I kind of lost my mind for a minute. I became psycho mom. And scary mommy happens. It's a thing. But it's about going back and going, wait a minute, isn't that interesting? How could I do differently? And also, I'm really sorry. You didn't deserve to be treated that way. That's on me. I'm the adult and I will work to be better about that. Let's have a conversation.
So do you think it helps families to maybe sit down and come up with a list of family values so that they kind of know where they're operating from?
I think it's absolutely important. And it just creates that awareness of it. Like you can get a list of family values off the internet and just sit down and be like, okay, we like 30 of these. Well, you're not going to carry out 30 of those in your life, but you might there might be 3 that really resonate. And interestingly, like you and your partner might have very different family values because you had very different upbringings. And maybe you get to come together and be like, okay, but these are the ones that we want to focus on in our family. It's really great conversation pieces. But then also you get to ask your children, especially if they're, 8 and older, you get to, well, what are things that you value? It can be a very powerful conversation.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I love that idea. So if there was one shift, if you were like, let this be the one thing that all families do, regardless of, what their specific values are or how old their kids are, let's take away everything. If there was one shift that a parent could make to really help their relationship with their kids, their parenting, or just even help their household run a little smoother. Do you have a specific suggestion that you feel just works across the board?
Yeah. When you stop making your child's behavior mean something about you,
Oh my goodness.
you
You are
start
knocking on everybody's door right now, Kristen.
seeing your child's behavior as meaning something about them. It's a message they are trying to send you. You're just not receiving it. And it doesn't mean that they hate you. That's not the message. The message is, I'm struggling. I'm hurting. I need you to see me. I need you to hear me. I need you to hold me. Because that's essentially everybody's natural needs as a human are to be seen, held, and heard. And when we feel those things, we then feel aligned. We feel valued. We feel enough. We feel safe. And essentially, that's what we're trying to create with our children, right? We've just been misguided on how we get there from past generations, and no undoing wrong for them. Like they did the best they could with the information they had at the time. We just know better now. So we get to do better. And that's completely different. So when you shift that behavior of there's something wrong with my child and they're doing it to me, shift it to what does it actually mean about them?
Oh my goodness. When you know better, you do better. Important to remember. So you kind of touched on it a minute ago, but I want to talk about what does it look like when you're trying to repair a difficult moment? So maybe you did go scary mommy.
Yeah.
Okay. What do we do to fix that? How do we repair that afterwards?
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize the brain function here, right? When you go scary mommy, just like when your child has a meltdown, you lose contact with your prefrontal cortex. I like to say that you dropped your Wi-Fi, that's your rational thinking brain, and you went down into survival mode, right? Big emotions happened and you snapped. You have to wait for that prefrontal cortex to come back online, which means that emotion has to kind of subside or start to go down before that prefrontal cortex starts receiving Wi-Fi again. And when that happens, then you can start to have that reflection. You get to have that moment of awareness and you get to recognize, right? You didn't mean to do any harm, but you probably did in that moment. And it's on the adult to apologize to the child because you get to model that for them. And then apologizing comes a lot easier for children. It becomes the norm. But you get to say, oh, you know what? I recognize my tone or I recognize the words I just said were not very helpful. They were really unkind. And that's not the kind of mommy or that's not the kind of daddy I want to be. I want to do better next time. What I meant to say was, I'm really feeling frustrated because I've asked you to take out the trash and it's now been 5 hours and the trash is all over the floor and you still haven't taken out the trash. What's going on for you so that we can get the trash taken out? Something of that idea, right? Like I recognize I was wrong. And also let's have a conversation on what could be different. What do you
Right.
need in this moment? How can I support you? And you are valuable enough to me that you didn't deserve to be treated that way. That goes so far and not in a manipulative way, in a repairing, healing, like heart healing way when a child goes, because now they're no longer carrying the story of I'm wrong and I'm bad and there's something wrong with me into decades later, right? We get to heal that story right now and fix that and change the trajectory of their self-belief.
I can hear people right now, Kristen, saying, maybe I shouldn't have acted like that. And the trash still needs to be taken out. Right? Like,
Yeah,
it's, yeah. So it's like, it's recognizing that we're not going to freak out about it, but also we need to fix the original problem. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
I encourage parents to have compassion and solution-oriented thinking. Like let's get over the problem. Like we can sit in the problem all day long and point fingers and say you, but that's not solving the problem. at the end of the day, we get to say, or at the end of the conversation, you're like, I'm really sorry this happened. I was wrong. Full stop. Right? That's
Right.
it. That's the repair. And then we get to take a beat and go, I'm also feeling really frustrated about the trash. How can we? It's an inclusive we. How can we do differently? The trash still needs to be taken out. I don't like if you need help taking out the trash, maybe like, especially with teenagers, like they might have a lot of homework going on. They might be stressing about a friend's situation. This opens the conversation for curiosity, right? Like understanding, like, tell me more about what's going on with you right now. Inevitably, like they might say, you know what? I pulled a muscle in practice last night. It really hurts me to move right now. I'm just trying to rest my leg. And you're like, okay, cool. We can have now I can act from a different place. Now I have more information. But it's that knee-jerk reaction when we don't have the information, when we only have the stories going on in our head of my child's being lazy, here's a value coming up, my kid's being a jerk, or whatever it is that story we're telling in our head, we now get to shift it because now we have more information.
Yep. Those stories in our head, they get us in trouble.
Yes, they do.
They do. Okay. So I want to shift to littles for a minute because you have a stance that I'm curious about when it comes to sharing. So will you tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are on sharing?
Yeah, I think it's really common, especially in preschools and elementary schools, for the adults to say, don't forget to share. We share our toys here. You only have that for 2 more minutes and then you have to share. And sharing becomes this thing that children are forced to do against their will, right? But what if we shift it? But here, before I get that, have you ever been forced to share something?
Uh, well, I'm a mother of 5. I
Right.
have to share stuff all the time, Kristen.
And how do you feel about that? Like, let's say you have your very special bag of chocolate that you've hidden away in the corner.
Right.
And you don't want to share that. And you hid it because you didn't want to share it. But what
Yeah.
if your kids found it and they took it anyways?
Yeah, totally happened. I'm
Yeah.
like, I did, yeah. I will say usually I'm like, I didn't hide that good enough.
Yeah.
And now I'm mad I don't have no more.
Exactly. It stimulates this anger, right? Or this bitterness of being forced to share something that's yours without your permission. It's somebody else dictating it. And our children feel the same, right? They feel the same. It might not have the same value as like a car or your very expensive special chocolate you only buy for you. It has emotional value to them and it has presence value to them and imaginative value. They might be so engaged in their play. This item has so much value to them. I'm not talking monetary value, but value to them in that moment. And when we disrupt that play and we say, you have to give it to your brother, he wants it. Like you're just ripping away. I mean, have you ever been woken up from a dream and then you're like, but I get to finish it. What's the ending? It's the same for our children, right? They didn't get to finish their play. They didn't get to figure out the ending, right? It got ripped from them. And instead we pacify them by saying, you can have it later, or you can play with it at home, or we have one just like it at home. And that moment gets ripped from them. And really what you're doing is you're rewarding the quote bully. It's not a true bully, but it's the person who's desiring the item who just came up and said, I want that. And now we're encouraging people to take things from others. And then you start to see that as children grow and progress. And then they start to realize they can't solve their own problems. So now you're encouraging tattletaling, right? And also instant gratification. But when we flip that script and we empower children with words to say, I'm still using this, you can have it when I'm done. All of a sudden, we've given the child who has the item the power to say, I'm not ready yet, but we're also giving them the compassion to say, you can have it when I'm done. So there's some hope for the child that is wanting it. And also now they're having to practice patience. They're having to also experience, well, I know that I'm going to be treated this way when I also have the item and I don't have to give it up until I want to. And once you start to trust that your child will innately share because they want to do good and they care about others than themselves, you start to see it happen. So you get to be as the parent rather than the dictator from across the room or the referee to say, it's your turn, you're done. You get to be the mediator. You get to come up and say, hey, I can hear that little Johnny is asking you a question. Do you hear them right now? And that's when the child looks up and goes, no, what are they saying? And you say, I heard them say, can they use that when you're done? And children will almost always say, yes, they can use it when I'm done. And if they say no, maybe that has maybe it's theirs. It's got a really special meaning to them. But when they're sharing from their choice, it's a very different share. Now they get to share with joy. They get to share with kindness. They get to share with compassion. And they're eliciting these more positive emotions rather than being forced to share, which is eliciting more negative behaviors like bitterness and shame and anger.
So yeah, because it's a very different reason behind it, and they're going to get to it anyway. It's like you said, for the most part, they're going to share when they get done. It's not that they're just going to not, because I mean, we're human and we like to connect, and yeah, and hopefully we want to be kind. So do you have, or do you know of, like a really common discipline habit that parents have that maybe we think we're doing good, we think that this is helpful, but it really disconnects us from our children?
I think anything that's done in an act of control or out of a place of control is more harmful than good, because you're then acting from a place that feels safe and good for you, but you've completely dismissed the receiver, the child in this case. So when you are coming from a place of like, oh, you'll be fine, or you're coming from a place of, just do it now, or you're coming from a place of just needing your child to do something because you said so.
Because I said so. Because I said so.
Because I said so.
Right.
Those are places, or those are moments when you can go, oh, you know what? Am I leading from a place of control here, or am I leading from a place of trust? Because when we start to trust our children, we allow them to also trust themselves. But when we control our children, you're accidentally sending the message to them, I don't believe that you can. Let that land for a minute. You're saying, I have to control everything for you because I don't believe you can do it on your own. But really what we're doing is we're controlling it because we need it to be safe for us. But that doesn't translate to children. They interpret it as my mom or my dad doesn't believe I can do it or that I'm capable of. And then when they become teenagers, they really rebel. They might do it when they're 5, but they will definitely not do it when they're 15. Those same skill sets don't translate. And so when you come from a place of what can I do right now to elicit trust? Where can I release the tight grip of control? Just maybe one finger, maybe not the whole thing. I don't have to let them free fall. We're not throwing them out into the world on their own, but where can I just lessen it to 1%, 2%? Where would that feel good to me? And again, it comes down to awareness of recognizing some of those behaviors, because we go into those routines, we go into default mode. But when we bring our mind, our prefrontal cortex back online with intention and breathing, we get to lead with clarity. And that really resonates.
So what are some things that you suggest parents do to reinforce positive behaviors?
Well, I mean, everybody loves a good compliment, but it has to be honest and true, right? I noticed how you tried that even though it was hard. I noticed that you kept working at that, even though maybe you failed a couple times. What did you learn from that? You get to encourage your child or through the things that you're saying and the ways that you're being and the ways that you're doing. And that looks like, look at trust as a feeling. It's not necessarily something you do. And that's what I teach parents differently, is I teach them to trust themselves. the things I do in my home are different from the things that you do in your home because your child's completely different. And the things that I do with my oldest child are completely different than what I do with my youngest child because they are completely different. They're having completely different experiences. And it's about more trusting yourself that you know your child and that also you have the skills to pause, ask questions, and gain more information, more understanding, so that together you can come up with a solution. Even with real young children. I mean, I've taught 3-year-olds how to do this. 3-year-olds. I mean, I got a 22-year-old, and we still do these things because they want to be a part of the conversation. Free will is a real thing. It does exist, even though sometimes we don't like it. It makes it a lot harder to parent, right? If they just did what we did. But also free will is a beautiful thing. It gives them that independence. It gives them that autonomy, that sense of industry and identity and pushback. We want them to push back on us because if they don't push back on us, are they going to be a doormat for the rest of their life? Are they going to let everybody else just walk all over them? Are they going to allow for, I mean, this translates to other relationships, friends in high school when they're peer influenced, college when they have romantic relationships, when they go out into the world and get a job with a boss and coworkers. We want them to push back on us at a young age. This is important, but for most parents, it feels uncomfortable. So when we gather our thoughts and we realize, oh, I'm teaching a life skill here. I get to teach what pushback looks like. You can have a meltdown. I'll sit with you through that. And then when we're done, we get to have that conversation. I noticed you had some really big feelings there. Would you like to tell me more about it? Let's talk about it. I know when I have big feelings, sometimes I have a story going on in my head. Tell me about your story. Or this is what my story looks like. Sharing these moments with our children creates that connection. So that can build from the relationship, build the relationship up, right? Because all of it comes down to being safe for your children. When you are a safe place for your children, they open up. They can feel free to be vulnerable and you get to know their inner thoughts.
Oh my goodness. So I want to go back to young kids because you talked about using this with children even as young as 3. So a lot of the typical things used when we're talking about like preschool or younger elementary are like rewards or sticker charts or the treasure chest, right? Or you'll get a toy on Friday if we do X, Y, and Z. So, do you think that that helps at all? Does it make behavior worse? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Look, at my own personal experience with that was it doesn't work, right? It's short term. Those are band-aids. They're really cute. You can print them off Pinterest or wherever else you find it on the internet.
And they
But what's the intention behind it? The intention behind it is to control, right? When really, if you look at the child's behavior, they're telling you they don't have a skill. There's a skill set that's missing. And so we get to get curious about that and identify that skill and slow down and go, wait a minute, maybe I need to teach this skill until my child has mastered it. Whatever it is you're trying to do with the behavior chart, oftentimes it's because children are being mean or children are being hyper or they're being disruptive in some form. That's often why children have a chore chart. If children live completely in the present and they feel all their feelings in the present, they have to feel all those feelings to come all the way through. And most of the time they're feeling these things because it's a direct reflection. They're mirroring back what the parent is feeling or the adult is feeling, right? Now you might be feeling stressed, but your child's experiencing hyperactivity. All that is they have taken on your feelings and they don't know what to do with it. It's all in their body and they just have to move. They don't know what to call it. They just sense something. So instead, why don't we teach them when that feeling happens? What are some positive things they can do with their body? Maybe they need to get outside. Maybe they need to change their location, like maybe they don't need to be in this room. Maybe they need to go do another activity for a little bit. But also maybe it's a message to you. What am I doing to impact this environment right now? Because you have an energetic field. Have you ever like sensed someone coming into the room before they actually walked into the room, and you knew what kind of mood they were in, especially the bad ones. Like you can sense that. You can sense that from across the house, right?
100%. Also, I think that this is my own little theory, Kristen. This is even more evident when you're getting on an elevator and somebody is in there. And I've always wondered, I'm like, is it because the energy is trapped? I don't know.
Yes. Close proximity.
Yes.
And then think about how close your kids are to you all day long. They're hypersensitive to that, right? Because that's all they don't have the cognitive development yet, and they don't have the verbal skills necessarily to communicate. Wow, mom, I'm feeling really dysregulated, or I'm feeling really hyper because your energy is giving off me like a bad vibe. I feel like you're being angry at me, and I don't know why. They can't have that conversation. I mean, really, there's very few adults that can have that conversation. But it's interesting because they feel it and it gets reflected back. So that's a moment where you get to say, okay, my child's missing a skill here. Maybe it's executive functioning skills. Maybe they can't carry out 3 tasks in a row. Okay, well, let's go back to doing 1 at a time. Then we get to build up to doing 2 at a time. And then we get to build up to doing 3. Maybe that looks like your child's still hitting. Okay, let's have a different conversation. Instead of hands are not for hitting, which is also true, I can see you're really angry. Let me show you a different way. When I'm angry, I like to do this.
That's so helpful. That's so helpful. So, do you have any encouragement, or what would you say to a parent who feels like they are trying everything and nothing is working? Like, my child's still hitting, or we still don't have the trash taken out, or just whatever the concerning thing is. They're like, I've tried all the things. What would you say to them?
I would say first and foremost, nothing is broken here. Nothing needs to be fixed. Nothing is wrong. It's just the way you're thinking about it. And that makes all the difference. Because while there are things that are not going right, there are 2 things happening always at the same time. There are always things that are going really well. So what if you shifted your intention to noticing all of the things that are going well? When I was in a really hard spot with my child, all I could think of were all the bad things he was doing all day long. But because my brain was trained to look, I was telling my brain to look for them. So that's all it would see. But I completely missed all the sweet moments when he was kind to a sibling, or when he did what I asked him to do the first time, or when, he came out of his room and had a good time with us, played a game of Uno. There were all of those moments too, but my brain completely dismissed them because I was focused on the bad. So while it might feel like nothing is working, there are really good things. So I would say slow down and start looking for the good. Because when you shift that intention or you shift that focus, all of a sudden the bad things are not nearly as big or as hard. That's the first thing. The second thing is you can seek out help for the skills you don't yet have. Because maybe it wasn't modeled for you. You recognize I'm dysregulated all the friggin' time and I don't know how to handle stress. I lose my mind. I turn into scary mommy. Okay, well, you can seek out help for that. You can learn new skills for that. And there's plenty. I mean, parent coaching industry is like the fastest growing industry. Why? Because we recognize the urgency. We recognize the need. And there are some parents who don't know differently, but they want to, so they can do differently. And so I think it's 2-part. 1, look for the good because it's always there. And then 2, identify the needs that you want to start with, or the skills that you want to start with, and start learning those.
Okay, that leads me to my next question. Kristen, this has been so helpful, and I just know that you have probably helped so many families. So can you tell everybody where to connect with you? How can they find you? How can they work with you? All of the things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the head parent coach at Empowered Educator. We offer programming for educators, but also for parents because we recognize that it's a community, right? And the best way to support a child is a 3-part process. It's the child, the parent, and the teacher. So we offer programming for parents, and we have a really great entry-level parent program called Listen Up that's super affordable. And then also you can find me on Instagram under kristen.schmoke.parenting, where I share all sorts of things. And I look forward to seeing everybody in those places.
Awesome. I love that, Kristen. Thank you so much for joining me. It was great talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me today and listening to today's episode on Happier Childhoods. If this conversation encouraged you or made you think, please share it with another person who cares about showing up well for kids. To learn more about how you can bring connection, movement, and mindfulness to families and children in your community, head to playmotionkids.com.